When is the right time to quit your job and focus on your business? Well, that is the question I am going to answer today. Now, this came from the recent episode of my podcast, episode 40, where I was talking about the need for patience. I was concluding a four-part series on why you should start now. And on the fourth part of that series, I was talking about why patience is essential when you start a business. And one of the recommendations I was making is that you should be very careful quitting your job when you just start a business because it takes time for your business to get going. So you're going to need the money from your job to actually sustain you while you go through the initial stages of figuring out whether this business idea is even worth pursuing or not. And so quitting your job cold turkey and going to just start a business, you're going to be wasting so much time and energy, and you're going to regret that you didn't have that money coming in from your job because the initial stages, you're not going to make any money. And where is the money going to come from to sustain you? And even if you had savings, you still want to hold on to those savings because you need a longer runway to be able to make this work. So the longer you could keep your job, the better. So then the question becomes, when is the right time to do that? And I came up with a formula about 10 years ago to answer this exact question, which is what I'm going to talk about and describe today. But before I explain the formula, it is important to understand why the business process of starting takes time. The first few months and years of a business, you are trying to do two things. Number one, figure out whether there is what we call a product market fit. So when you start initially, you are just guessing. You had a problem that you've identified that you wanted to solve, and you think that you're the best person to solve that problem. So you've come up with a solution, and your solution could be a product or a service. And so you're confident that, okay, I'm going to go do this. Well, here's the news. You're just making assumption about a lot of things when you start. Number one, you're assuming that the problem that you've identified is a big pain point for the customer segment you're targeting. Number two, you're assuming that the solution that you've come up with is the best solution. Number three, you're assuming that the people that you're trying to sell to are going to pay the price that you're recommending. And number four, you're assuming that they're willing to give up the existing solution they have for that problem. If they do, for your solution. There's so many assumptions there, and all that needs to get worked out. And those get worked out, one, during customer discovery, and then two, when you set up what we call the MVP, the minimum viable product, put it out there, test it, let people react to it, you improve upon it, test it. So the first few months and years, you're just trying to figure things out, including figuring out the business model. What is the business model? It is the right mix of the product that solves people's biggest pain point at a price they can afford or they're willing to pay, and at a delivery mechanism that makes it easier, and a marketing strategy that allows you to reach the ideal customer base that you're trying to sell those products to. So there's a lot to figure out, and that takes testing, and it could take months, it could take a few years to really land at that secret sauce where you're like, okay, I have figured out this business model on the best way to deliver this solution to this audience or this customer segment that I'm trying to pursue. So all takes time, and time is money. And while you're going through that, you're probably burning cash. And so there is the need to extend your runway. So not quitting your job too soon is a strategy about extending your runway so that you can give yourself enough time to be able to go through this process of trying to figure things out about whether this thing is worth pursuing, and if it's worth pursuing, figuring out the best way to arrive at a model that works, that can make you money, that allows you to build a business that is can sustain your lifestyle and hopefully grow to be something big. So now let's get to the formula. The formula that I have about when to quit your job, when is the right time to quit your job and focus on your business, is if your business, the new business, is able to pay for 1/3 of your bare bones living expenses. Bare bones is a phrase, a line I'm using specifically. And I'm going to talk about why. Because your currently bloated expense base is a very high expectation to put on a new business to have to sustain or even fund. So, what you want to do is you want to sit down and go through your budget and say, okay, what are the bare minimums that I can sustain myself with while I build this business that could be a game changer that could eventually allow me to come back to the bigger life or list of things that I was originally living off of or enjoying or experiencing, and that this business could even afford me a much larger and more fulfilling experience and lifestyle if things go well. But because I'm going to need a longer runway, you have to be realistic with yourself and come up with a bare bones budget of what does that look like. And if you have responsibility, you're married, you have kids, that's the conversation you have to have with your spouse and say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. We need to trim things down to what can sustain us while I go through this season, because this is number one, something I have to do to really test so that I have no regrets about not doing it. And number two, it could be a big break for our family and take us to a new a new level, a new plane that we have never been before. So the sacrifice you're going to make in the interim is worth not having regrets in life about not pursuing this thing that you were confident could work. And then two, what if it works? Your life could change. If it doesn't work, then at least you have a very bare bones basis to be able to pick up your life and move on. So that exercise is important. So do not lie to yourself. And if you include things in that bare bones that are just wants but not needs, you are just shooting yourself in the foot, because let's say there's something in there that is like cost you $500 a month, and you're insisting that it has to be in there. Okay, well, 6 months, that's what, $3,000. So that $3,000, if you are not spending it on that thing, how can that extend your runway? So it's not about arguing with yourself about what is important and what is a need and what is a want. It's about what level can you go to where you're not causing so much pain, but can at least live a decent life while you pursue this thing that you want. So that's the first thing you need to do. Once you do that, then if your business can sustain, remember, you have to do this before you start. This is not something you do in the future. You have to do it before you even go into pursuing this business venture, because you want to minimize the cost of or the burden that this business is going to place on you if you have such a bloated budget. So get to that bare bones and start there. And then if your business gets to the point where it can pay for 1/3 of that bare bones budget, it's time to quit. That is the time to quit your job. And let me explain why. Because if you have 3 parts and your business is taking part 1, then you can now get a part-time job that is conducive for you and get another third. And then now that you have the whole day, well, not the whole day, but at least most of the day, you can hustle harder. Because remember, when you were working full-time and doing the job, your business part-time, there was this tension of you don't have enough time to do the business. Now you flip the script. You're doing the business full-time and you have a part-time job. So now that you have more time, you can hustle harder to get another third sooner. And then the other third is through a part-time job. Now, let me talk about part-time job. And I'm not telling you anything that I haven't done. So let me give you a story that happened to me years ago. I was between businesses. I was in a transition period. And I had started a new business. I had sunsetted a business and started a new business. And that new business was actually making money, but not enough to really sustain me. So I took my own advice and did the third thing I'm talking to you about. It was actually making more than a third already when I decided it was a side gig. It was a side gig that I had turned into a full-time gig, but it wasn't able to cover my entire family budget. So what I did was I took a part-time job, and and when I come to part-time job, it has to be something that fits your way of working. I am in a knowledge business where I need to be creative and pour out creativity every day. So I took a gig that I know I can work around my schedule, come in, work the whole day, and then go to that gig. So what I picked was I drove Uber for about 6 months. And it was a perfect gig because I'll come in the morning, spend the entire day, maybe to like 5 p.m., and work, and pour everything into the business. And then after 5 p.m., I go drive Uber for a few hours. I made about $2,000 a month consistently doing that. So for me, it worked. It was the perfect thing because now I was able to work it around my schedule and allowed me to be very productive and put all my big productive energy into my business. Now, here's the thing about this third method. Because my business was paying a third of my expenses, Uber was paying the other third. Now I have to make the other third. Well, I got motivated because, of course, I did not want to drive Uber forever. So whenever I finished work and went to drive Uber, by the way, I have tremendous respect for Uber drivers after that 6 month experience. It is a hard job sitting down and driving for hours, and it gave me so much appreciation and empathy and respect for Uber drivers. Now I am the biggest tipper of Uber drivers because I know what they go through. But my main point here is that because it was something that I did not want to do for a long time, and there's also, it was harder than the business that I had, the work that I was doing with my business. Driving Uber was harder. It was an extra motivation. So when I came in the following day to the office to work, I was on it. I was putting in everything because I want to shorten the amount of time I have to spend on this part-time job and increase the amount of time. So what happens is that the more your business is growing, the lesser hours you have to spend on that part-time job. So it becomes an extra motivator for you to be able to put in the work that is required to get this business to where it needs to be, so that you don't have to, you don't have to depend on this part-time job anymore. Because the goal is to do your business full time. This is a path. This is a transition period to get you to be able to do your business full time. So this is the formula to answer the question, when is it the right time to quit your job and focus on your business? Because there is actually a good formula to do that. And as I said, I came up with that 10 years ago, and I live by it. I have tested it myself, and I know it works, and it has the right built-in system to motivate you while you're doing that part-time job to want to work harder on your full-time business, because you want to get off that part-time gig and focus on your business full-time, because the goal is to be full-time in your business, because all your energy and time, you should be living and breathing that. But until then, you want to use that as motivation so that you can get closer and closer to the time when you can do the business full time and give it your entire mind and attention. So I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. And I am really excited that I did this particular episode, because I think that it's going to provide a lot of you context and a framework when you're thinking about your business, what it's going to take, and then the expectation that you put on yourself when you start the business and where you need to get to before you even start contemplating quitting your day job. So, that is it for today. Until the next time, know this: you can do hard things. So, keep pushing forward.